Fuka's identity gets out as we kind of see a little more into the termination of Kukuru as we get into the third and fourth episode of the Aquatope on White Sand. And this is my thoughts on those two episodes, so let's jump into it. With the third episode, we get a lot of perspective of Kukuru herself and how she essentially got to where she is now. We see that she had her parents with her when she was younger. Unfortunately, at some point, she lost them. But in this early segment, you really get this instilled idea of how much she loved this aquarium and the bonds that she created with her family, and how essentially after losing her family, many believe that she, essentially made the aquarium itself her surrogate family. And this is her family now. The animals there, the aquarium itself is her family, and she does not want to lose this. Even though at the same time you are seeing that the grandfather's going in there and he's trying to find people that'll adopt the fish out to, essentially setting up everything for it to be closed, even still. And we do get a perspective that essentially she's not doing well in school itself. She's very much so has her mind on the penguins, not really focusing on school itself. But even still, as her teacher is kind of questioning her, she's like, the only reason I'm here is because my grandfather wants me to graduate. If it weren't for that, I would have been gone a long time ago. The aquarium is her focus. Aquarium is her future. She doesn't care about really anything else. And obviously with her grandfather wanting to close things down and her trying to be the acting director and try to take on this role, she's very reluctant to tell her grandfather really anything that's happening, especially when it comes to a certain blistering that is happening on the penguins. She ends up bringing in the doctor who's supposed to be on maternity leave. Apparently she claims that she's already long overdue, but she still ends up coming there to see the penguins anyways. And while she's there, she ends up her water breaking, and they have to rush to get somebody to take her to the hospital. And it's kind of an interesting little scene here because we have a similar situation happen to this mother, or the doctor, that we had with Fuka. And that you do have this little, while she's, very much having contractions, she's struggling while she's waiting for this car, she ends up kind of getting this moment of peace where this wave of water ends up consuming her. And she's able to actually see her own, or she claims that it is her child that ends up in the water with her and says that she'll see her soon, which I thought was really sweet. The kind of question mark thing that happens following this is that she ends up finding this kind of, what would you call it, a maternity booklet that you would get from, for pregnant ladies to give them information. And she pretty much sees that it's the same book that her mother had at some point. She said something to the effect of, where would you get this? And of course, that's the big joke of like, well, you're either pregnant. But no, she's trying to find some kind of connection with what her mother's, where she gave birth to her. I'm not quite sure at this point what it's trying to... She has the book already that her mother had. I'm just not quite sure at this point what connection she's trying to make with this. Like, is it that she doesn't know where her parents were from? I'm sure her grandfather would be able to tell her. It is a big question mark for me. Maybe I'm missing something, but I'm really trying to gather what she's getting from knowing where this book came from and what kind of connection is there. So maybe we'll see in the future episodes. I'm sure we will. It seems like her not having her parents is a kind of a key role here in her storytelling. In the fourth episode, it more focuses on Fuka as Kukuru decides to have a touch pool event where they set out pools and kids are able to come in and actually touch the fish. And Kukuru ends up assigning Fuka to be basically the presenter, the person that actually stands there, the attendant to, bring people in and handle guiding the children, letting them know, you can't harm the fish, don't touch them too hard, all these little kind of limits and information that she can give them. And obviously the difficulty that comes in that is this is going to be the first time what she's really kind of up at the forefront. And what ends up coming from that is obviously her identity being revealed. Now, we technically did have somebody recognize who she was prior to this, where one of the guy that is actually supposed to be working in the back that has been injured for a long time ends up actually recognizing her because he's a big Idol fan. And through him, pretty much everybody learns about this that's within the company. Kukuru learns, Karen learns, all of them learn about the identity of Fuka. It isn't until she's working at this touch pool that a random passerby ends up spotting her and recognizing her. So now the word's out. The word's out at this point. Which was funny because as the episode kind of wrapped up, they had a post-credit scene, and it shows Kukuru and Fuka. They're walking to the aquarium, and it's got a perspective like there's somebody at the door. And my immediate mind went straight to, oh no, it's going to be the press. It's going to be journalists and people everywhere just swamping to get news about this idol turned aquarium attendant. And no, it ends up being her mother, which we find out like shortly prior to this that after the birth of this doctor, I think her name was Ruka, the doctor basically having her child, it kind of makes Fuka, rethink how she's treating her mother. And so she ends up telling her mother, look, I'm over here. I'm helping at this aquarium. Don't worry about me. And obviously, mom's not too happy about that. So now she's here to say she doesn't look happy. In the brief shot that we get of her at the end of the fourth episode, she doesn't look happy. But I thought it was funny because I completely thought it was going to be just tons and tons of reporters there to talk to question her, which I don't think they've really kind of painted Fuka as being a huge success. But at the same time, they don't paint her as being bad at her work. It's just that she decided to step aside. At least what we get from the perspective of what she says, there was another girl that wanted to be centered for her grandmother, and so she stepped aside, and they've seen it as her slacking off. So I don't necessarily see it. I don't necessarily see her as being popular enough that this media is going to rush over to talk to her, but there is still something to be said about how much people would want to pay attention to a girl who was an idol in Tokyo who suddenly randomly becomes an attendant at a small aquarium out in the middle of nowhere. I'm sure that would be something that would be newsworthy that they would probably suck up and try to figure out what happened. She's from this big idol studio. What happened? There's going to be press that want to get in on this. So I am kind of shocked by that not being the case in this particular situation. I would assume that this is going to happen really quickly. And that's the thing is like, again, similar to that particular mindset of wondering what's going on here is, why is Fuka so nervous? That's the other thing I haven't really gathered quite yet. Again, it didn't establish with what we know of her past with the idol industry. It doesn't necessarily establish that she has stage fright. Again, her reasoning for not becoming center was to allow somebody else to become center. It never established that she was stage fright, unless I missed something. So it is odd that she is afraid of attention, and she knocks it out of the park. When she steps up to that whole pull touch thing, she's doing perfectly fine. It isn't until somebody recognizes her identity that she panics. And so my assumption is that the only reason that she's panicking is because her identity has been revealed and they're going to make a scene and it's going to take away from what's happening. And that's essentially what she does say in the situation, is she's kind of panicking over that attention that would drive away from what she's supposed to be doing. Having a bunch of people running up with cameras while she's trying to attend children is not something she wants. And she does technically express that when she comes back out and says, "Hi, I'm doing this here. Please be respectful, essentially, and let me do what I'm doing. Thank you." But it would be cool. I mean, because this is the thing that I'm really kind of excited for, and it's something that I kind of mentioned with the previous impressions, is I'm excited for this moment that she essentially is building what she's doing with Kukuru and the relationships they have. She's building it with herself at this point. Like, we've seen her determination to learn these fish, to learn what to do, to learn how to help Kukuru with her dream. She's supporting Kukuru with everything she's got, and it's showing her doing that with herself. And the exciting thing that comes from that is, beyond episode 5 and probably 6 of her basically having to fight back at her mother, who probably obviously doesn't want her to be working in some rundown aquarium out in the middle of nowhere. Her mother's probably a part of the entertainment industry, and she wants to support her to become an entertainer, not some random grunt worker at an aquarium. Once she fights mom back and shows mom this is what she wants to do, what I'm assuming it's going to get into is they're going to find out where Fuka is, the idol industry is going to, the reporters, and attention's going to come to the aquarium, not for Kukuru, not for the aquarium, but for Fuka, and they're going to have to figure out how to channel that to help them, but not be the reason why it's successful. And that'll be an interesting story beat for them to really get into. But yeah, we gotta fight Mom first. we gotta fight the mini boss first, which is Mom, and then we can fight the media, which is the big grand boss, and then the debt, which is the second form of the boss. But yes, episode 4, we must address it. Very Yuri. I'm sure everybody's being super exciting about how Yuri this 4th episode felt. It was sweet. I really did like it. I do really think they're painting, even if you can claim it to be Yuri bait, I think that's what it's probably going to be in the end. I don't know PA works for being very heavy Yuri. I know they've done stuff before that's very Yuri bait. And I don't necessarily think it's that. I don't like calling it that personally. I've seen it. I know what that is. I usually call Yuri bait more in the idea of where it's pushing it, but it never does anything with it. And I think what they're really pushing with here is Kukuru doesn't have anything. She doesn't have friends. She doesn't have family. She has her grandfather, that's for sure, but she doesn't have anybody close to her. She's very independent, and she doesn't have anybody. And now she has somebody that's seen the same thing she did. When Fuka seen this first penguin, she gravitated to it. Knowing that Kukuru, it's special to Kukuru, she gravitated to it, seen its symbolism, and wanted to promote it. She was carrying it around with her. She wanted to promote it. And that, with the idea of how hard Fuka's working to essentially help Kukuru with her dreams, they're making a bond, a very strong bond. And I'm curious, I'm hopeful that later on they will manage to turn this into a story beat for Fuka herself when she realizes that she's essentially putting Kukuru in place of her own existence. Fuka is becoming Kukuru, which is not necessarily a healthy thing for somebody to do. You shouldn't make somebody your all. You should still have your own worth. And I'm curious if they'll eventually make that a thing. But for now, Fuka is making Kukuru her everything. And that's creating a really strong bond between the two of them because Kukuru wants somebody. She has gained somebody. And now they have a bond that's really, I would honestly say it's one of those cases where you have this established relationship that has potential and is already kind of blossoming as something that is more than love and more than friendship, is a bond. And yes, you can call it Yuri. You can call it friendship. It's just a bond, and that is really what it is. Yes, the hand-to-cheek thing with the two of them is very, very much has the Doki Dokis going, but I think it's more than that. I think it's just a strong bond. And I think that's something that's always sadly mistaken in the world of anime, is mistaking bonds for relationships. And I'm fine with either way. Honestly, if it turns into a full-on Yuri shirt, do it. They're cute. I love them together. If it turns into just friendships, I ain't going to be mad. And I'm sure the Yuri fans are going to probably be in uproar. Another Yuri bait. It's a bond. And they're doing a really good job of expressing that bond. But like I said, I hope that eventually they will turn Fuka into a story realizing that she can't just give up her own self. And that's exactly what she's technically doing now. And I'm wondering if that'll blow up in her face and turn into a really cool story beat. But as it stands now, really fantastic last 2 episodes. We're really starting to get into stuff at this point. I think like the exposure of Fuka herself, the determination of Kukuru, her having a situation blow up on her face is obviously making her grow. She's established this concept of courage is not the same as recklessness. So she's had something fly in her face, and now she needs to learn and move forward. And I think that's going to be a fantastic thing going forward. But that's my thoughts on the 3rd and 4th episode of Aquatope on the White Sand. Hope you guys enjoyed my impressions. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of the 2 episodes, and subscribe if you haven't already. I thank y'all for watching, and y'all take care.